Welcome, everyone. Today, we're breaking down a major development in global aviation and geopolitics. On November 21st, 2025, the United States issued a new advisory warning American and allied airlines not to fly over Venezuelan airspace. On the surface, it sounds like a simple safety alert, but the consequences and the hidden motives reach far deeper. Let's explore what this warning really means, why the U.S. issued it, and how it affects Venezuela, airlines, neighboring countries, and global power politics. The U.S. stated that flying over Venezuela poses a risk of radar misidentification, possible tracking mistakes, air defense confusion, and even accidental targeting of civilian aircraft. These concerns make the advisory appear technical and purely safety-based. But experts see something else. This is not just about radar systems. It's a strategic message. The United States is classifying Venezuela as a high-risk zone, influencing global perception without declaring an actual no-fly zone. This marks a significant shift from traditional sanctions toward a new form of aviation-based pressure. It's a subtle but powerful way to tighten the screws. So why did the U.S. make this move now? For years, Washington has used a wide range of tools to pressure the Maduro government: oil sanctions, banking restrictions, targeted asset freezes, and diplomatic isolation. But these tools have shown diminishing returns. Venezuela has survived, largely by relying on its allies like Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey, and by finding secondary markets for its oil trade. Washington needed a new source of leverage. By issuing an airspace warning, the U.S. targets something Venezuela cannot easily bypass: the global aviation system. This entire system is heavily controlled by Western insurers and regulators. This is a brilliant and, frankly, a chilling way to isolate a country without firing a single shot. The immediate impact on airlines is huge. Venezuela sits on a critical aviation corridor connecting North and South America, the Caribbean, and transatlantic routes. Avoiding its airspace forces airlines to reroute hundreds of miles. This leads directly to higher fuel consumption, longer flight times, more CO2 emissions, and disrupted crew schedules. Ultimately, it means increased ticket prices for you and me. Even small route changes matter because airlines operate on razor-thin margins. But the biggest effect comes from aviation insurance. The global insurance market is mostly run by U.S. and European underwriters. When the U.S. calls an airspace unsafe, insurers automatically raise premiums for any airline that flies there. So airlines face a tough choice: pay a lot more money or avoid Venezuela entirely. Most will choose to avoid it. Naturally, different airlines will respond differently. U.S. and European carriers will be the first to reroute. They have to follow U.S. and EU safety expectations, they rely on Western insurers, and they want to avoid any reputational risk. Latin American airlines face a much tougher decision. Flying over Venezuela is often shorter and more efficient for them. But these same airlines depend on U.S. maintenance, leasing agreements, and FAA certifications. Non-compliance could seriously hurt them in future negotiations. So, most will quietly reroute to avoid trouble. And what about countries like Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey? They might continue overflying Venezuela to show political independence, deepen their ties with Caracas, and signal defiance of U.S. influence. But even they depend on Western aircraft parts from Airbus and Boeing, which makes long-term defiance a very tricky game. This warning doesn't just hurt overflights, it damages direct international connections to Venezuela. Airlines will start asking tough questions. Is it truly safe to enter Venezuelan airspace? Will our insurance costs skyrocket? Could future U.S. restrictions target direct flights too? This hesitation leads to fewer international routes into Caracas, which means reduced airport revenue, declining tourism, and deeper isolation for the country. Neighboring hubs in Colombia, Brazil, Panama, and the Caribbean might actually gain more passengers as indirect travel becomes the only option. But they may also face diplomatic pressure to limit their cooperation with Venezuelan aviation authorities. And we can't forget the human cost. For Venezuelan families living abroad, this means higher travel costs, fewer available flights, longer travel times, and even reduced access for humanitarian aid. So, how is Venezuela likely to respond to this pressure? It has a few strategic options. First, it could strengthen ties with its allies. Caracas could deepen cooperation with Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey, who might offer radar upgrades, military support, or financial aid. Second, Venezuela could launch a diplomatic counter-narrative. It might take the issue to international bodies like the ICAO or the UN General Assembly, accusing the U.S. of politicizing aviation safety for its own geopolitical goals. Third, it could try to make technical improvements. To reassure insurers, Venezuela might publish new safety reports, invite international observers, and upgrade its air traffic control systems. Finally, we might see a strategy of rhetorical defiance but quiet adjustments. Publicly, Maduro's government must appear strong and resistant to U.S. pressure. Privately, however, they might negotiate or modify certain practices behind the scenes to reduce tensions. This advisory reveals a new reality in global politics. Powerful nations don't just use military force and economic sanctions anymore. Now, they use their control over global infrastructure. The U.S. can influence aviation insurance, aircraft financing, flight safety ratings, and international risk perception. This gives Washington extraordinary leverage. Venezuela becomes a textbook example of how a country can be isolated not by blockades or sanctions alone, but by shaping how the entire world perceives risk. This is part of a broader trend where geopolitical competition is moving into new arenas: airspace, shipping routes, undersea cables, financial networks, and even satellite systems. In today's multipolar world, infrastructure itself has become a battlefield. In the end, the U.S. airspace warning over Venezuela may look like a routine safety alert, but it is actually a sophisticated and powerful tool of geopolitical pressure.